is great. It's a bit of a reunion. Okay, we can talk over my traveler's tales over drinks later. I definitely need them. So in 2011, I wrote a chapter entitled Moving Out of Bounds for Brad Buckley and John Konomo's book, Rethinking the Contemporary Art School. In that chapter, I suggested that the time had arrived for the art school, its pedagogy, its faculty, and graduates to adopt a transdisciplinary approach to knowledge. Here's a great example of that. Roger, yay. I noted that before the 20th century, art and artists from many cultures were inspired by disciplines far beyond the humanities, fields of literature, philosophy, or history. These engagements include mathematics, the sciences, and the emerging fields of social science. As C.P. Snow pointed out in 1959, if anything, the post-war era in the West rigidified specialization, creating barriers between disciplines, and with this, a separation of the arts and sciences. My chapter explored the emerging early 21st century drive towards collaboration between artists, designers, and scientists, and I noted, quote, the drive towards collaboration can stem, no pun intended, from instrumentalist impulses amongst artists as much as from engineers or scientists wanting to use artists' representational skills. While some artists are capable of inventing tools and others can create content with existing tools, yet others require interdisciplinary collaboration to develop the technologies that can fit their artistic vision, unquote, of self. As Christy Sommerer and Laurie Mignogno pointed out over a decade ago, collaboration between artists and technologists is a fundamental requirement of the many large-scale new media arts or art-sci projects. Well, I thought I would start my talk by considering some of the deeper benefits of collaboration that can be seen as following, and then lead a little bit into a conversation about my school. So artists and designers invent different kinds of tools and redirect tools. In my past experience, this was evident in the early days of computational graphics, for example, the Art and Virtual Environments project at the Banff Centre, where Lawrence Paul Huakalupton, a Haida painter, challenged Alias Wavefront to create circular movements in graphics, and Shar Davies pressed Sofimage for abstract painterly tools. Art and Virtual Environments was a massive project that brought together the capacity of interval research, Paul Allen's outfit, there for a few years, Silicon Graphics, Alias Wavefront, Softimage, and a horde of artists and designers, and 4 programmers. Just going to go through some of the images from that. So art and design also bring innovation in philosophy to science and technology and vice versa. This is perhaps most pronounced in relationship to scientific realism and the aesthetics of realism, as opposed to more contingent critiques of realism on the part of artists, and conceptualism and post-structuralism, which has challenged notions of the real. Mark Hansen, in New Philosophy for New Media, notes the abilities of artists working in immersive environments to, and I quote, compel us to confront the rich temporal depth or effective bodily spacing that underlies our complex experience of time. This is Catherine Richards' early work with looking at proprioception and virtual reality. New trends in science acknowledge phenomenology, ambiguity, complexity theory, emergence, and the recognition that complex systems are difficult to predict. Abstraction and synthesis are perceived as the new real, and contradictory views within science allow elasticity in aesthetics and provide fertile ground for artists and designers who choose to collaborate with science. So I believe that artists and designers can work with science to produce humanist and post-humanist philosophy from the perspective of human culture and respect for the natural world. In a global context, grappling with the impacts of colonialism, at home in North America, with the devastation of Indigenous cultures and their creative resilience and return, and with the legacies of slavery and diaspora communities, the exciting value proposition is to engage different approaches to the very questions that science asks. The concept of 7 generations, which is common to many Indigenous communities, urges that we look ahead and analyze impacts of contemporary decisions 7 generations in the future. That's about 250 years or a quarter millennium. For example, Julie Nagham's Transactive Memory Keeper project creates on-reserve maker labs along the principles of Indigenous methodologies: collaboration, learning by doing, and involving community members. Or as Jasmine Winter and Justine Baudreau propose, and I quote, connecting contemporary Indigenous innovations to makerspace theories and back to traditional Indigenous knowledge in a circular way that finds the common thread of community well-being. So knowledge is carried by culture and language, and Wisconsin's Indigenous arts and science is rooted in the values of respect, relationship, and responsibility. The IAS partners with Native tribes throughout Wisconsin, I thought I should give you an American example, to address the need for culturally relevant STEM learning experience and career exploration in the context of what they call restoration-based education. And in this instance, restoration carries multiple meanings: being of the land, of the culture and its knowledge and its peoples. Indigenous Futurism is a project led by Skawanati Fragnito and Jason Lewis, which provides Indigenous youth with the tools to imagine and invent their futures through the AbTech Lab. Aboriginal Technology, AbTech. Fragnito has created narratives in machinima, which combine myths of creation and destruction. Next point. Science offers rich material for art making and critical design, and art and design offer new approaches for science. Paola Antonelli, the curator of design at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City and creator of the Design and the Elastic Mind exhibit, proposes that new technologies offer scientists the freedom to use their imaginations, particularly in the realm of biosciences, biotech, green and clean tech, and nanotech, where subject matter is invisible or malleable, opening their practice to the methods and views of artists and designers. And I'm citing an important work which is now, over 15 years old, but it was a bit groundbreaking in the kind of place it opened for science-art collaboration. So Jane Prophet's work Cell was created with the very imaginative mathematician Mark Dinverno, the geneticist Neil Thies, who is a world leader in adult stem cell research and liver pathology at the Beth Israel Medical Center in New York. And I just read his statement as a scientist, and I quote, he has interest in, quote, stem cell plasticity, complexity theory applications to cell biology, formulations of a postmodern biology, and mind-body medicine, unquote. It is visually arresting software that Jane built for its time, and it was built to facilitate Thies's breakthrough research demonstrating relationships between previously invisible phenomena. Cell revised understandings of human liver microanatomy, which in turn led directly to identification of possible liver stem cell niches and the marrow-to-liver regeneration pathway. So his collaboration with Prophet, for him as a scientist, was deeply transformational because her revealing visualizations, and she was really an excellent artificial life programmer as well, allowed Thies to really build his interest in theoretical biology and still complexity theory, but to really shape and shift the ways that he understood pathology. On a more maybe contemporary note, the Phase Lab at my university, led by Michael Page, bridges artistic holography and brain imaging. And Francis Le Boutellier works with data from fetal scans to create lifelong models, which are used to train nurses and surgeons in uteri surgical interventions. And Le Boutellier prides himself on the models which were originally sculpted and are now 3D printed. And he works very closely with research scientists at Sick Children's Hospital. Next point. Art and design bring new methodologies to solving wicked contemporary problems, including foresighting techniques, experimental and user-focused processes. Richard Lockman notes in his cogent article, quote, why scientists need arts training, STEAM not STEM, unquote, the arts in the broadest strokes can help to frame the questions that we tackle, bring an ethical context to science, and teach empathy. Leaders of the human-computer interaction community, Bill Buxton, and these are images from recent, sort of 15 years of bioart that really bring a sort of artistic lens to contemporary scientific research. including this very beautiful piece in which the portrait fades over time using a cellular bioart composition. So leaders of the HCI community, Bill Buxton and Saul Greenberg, place extraordinary value on the methods of art and design, and they express the concern that there is a crossroads in the process of discovery. Human ingenuity, they say, needs to be privileged once again. They want to break the model of incremental research and see artistic and design methods as the way forward, whether it's sketching, body experiences, and new forms of creative collaboration. And these are works that are really looking at sort of inverting how we understand drones, both in a very applied way with the global medical rescue of AV drones, which, by the way, was interestingly at the Venice Architecture Biennale, so kind of shifting spaces in terms of understanding the impacts of this kind of work. So philosopher-sociologist Bruno Latour has shown the ways that scientific and technical interventions can be black boxed. So artists and designers disclose the working of technology. And what he means by that is represented as finished, whole products, whose inner working or mode of development cannot be seen. So science then appears as a kind of free-floating enterprise operating as an engine outside of society without people as carriers. But another way to think about this is that technologies are engineered with assumptions about the identities of their users implicit in their design, as well as the affordances of their components. And the assumptions about users are active at every layer, in content produced for or by the technology, at the interface, in the software that runs on machines, right through to the machine code and platform engineering. And these assumptions, in fact, act back on their users. They create behaviors, they shape identities. So we could say that all forms of technology are in fact designed. So it is more complex. Users are also disruptive, finding applications for technologies that defy assumptions that are built into them. And Constant Dullard, who's an artist who I'm very interested right now, I just heard him speak in New York at the art fairs this weekend. He's an artist programmer, and he's been described as an ethical troll, a kind of participatory anthropologist artist who has created bots that level the numbers of Instagram followers of famed artists, compromising their market value when it is determined, and if it is determined by follower numbers. So he bought 2.5 million followers for $5,500 and distributed them amongst famous people and leveled all of their Instagram following. So this discussion prefaces OCAD University as a case study. So OCAD University, I'll get to this in a minute, defines itself as Canada's University of the Imagination. And it was founded in 1876. It's dedicated to art and design education, practice and research, and to knowledge and invention across a wide range of disciplines. So I've been president there for 13 years. And in the 1980s, OCA, at the time, we've gone through a lot of name change, Ontario College of Art back then, was home to radical electronic artists such as robotics creator Norman White, early AI and responsive technology inventor David Rokeby, who is still making artwork, this is a piece of his, as well as graduating some of Canada's most renowned Indigenous artists, Tom Hill, Rebecca Belmore. These two strands of DNA are critical components of the current institutional vision. So since my arrival, all of the strategic planning processes have used strategic foresight and innovation methodologies. So foresighting employs complex systems analysis and future studies through environmental scanning, emergent signal analysis, data analytics and visualization, scenario learning, and technology assessment. So it has been described as the ability to create and sustain a variety of high-quality forward views and apply the emerging insights in organizationally useful ways. Once foresight exercises are complete, institutions can then backcast them within the constraints through the foresight exercise using design thinking. So for our recent vision and mission, we worked with Kinetic Cafe. These were young external researchers who were also our alumni. And we undertook a very deep dive into contemporary practices, issues, and approaches, and equally the knowledge and ethos of our institution. So the resulting vision and mission and strategic directions reflected our learnings. Our strategic foresight lab uses something called GigaMap techniques developed by Birger Sevaldsson of the Oslo School of Architecture and Design. And these are synthesis maps which show patterns and extract points of leverage for systems change. So this is just an example of imagining a biomimetic economy. So in December 2016, after months of facilitated strategic foresight research, broad community and institutional engagement, we adopted a new vision and mission that confirmed what I believe has been a 13-year convergent pathway. The banner of the new vision states, "Transformed by imaginations." And it's followed by the following. OCAD University challenges you to audaciously and responsibly pursue the questions of our time through sciences, humanities, and sciences, and the interplay of art, design, and these. The vision and mission have been followed by a new academic and research plan, and side by side with our deep commitment to providing students with STEM capacities and the ability to be disruptors lies two other commitments. One to Indigenous knowledge, culture, and decolonization, and the second is to a true integration of diversity. And I just thought it's interesting to kind of look at these maps. So this is really pulling out all of this data, analyzing it, and building a very interactive knowledge map that we can refer to as that kind of source code of our strategic plan. And so these two things may seem oppositional, but in fact, what we're trying to do is really, I think, in a fairly radical way, integrate these kinds of knowledge. So the mission has statements in it like we invite you to build aware, generous, and joyful communities, integrating multiple perspectives and critical practices. And there's a very deep sense of what we describe as permeable learning in the structure of learning. For audacious and responsible pursuit, we nurture diversity and resilience and practice equity, inclusion, sustainability, and respect for Indigenous voices and culture. And as a really key word within the text that follows is the idea of empathy. And then for the questions of our time, we talk about the importance of seeking and responding to the questions of our time, enriching our disciplines, and acting as transformative social, economic, environmental, and cultural agents. And there's this notion that design and art are fields of tension, disruption, and invention, provoking new questions and making art and design a source of major discoveries and solutions. And then finally, the powerful interplay of art, design, the social sciences, humanities, and the sciences. We talk about engaging with materials, data, technologies, ideas, pedagogy, and diverse, again, Indigenous perspectives to support unique research and studio practice. And we talk as well about the value of moving between looking, seeing, observing, and thinking and making. So a little bit of empirical data. Current academic planning at our institution draws on a commitment to, within this academic plan, and this is essentially an art and design school. So for those of you in the US, think about Pratt or Parsons or RISD, School of Visual Arts in New York, depends where you're from, School of the Art Institute in Chicago. So within our environment, we're actually increasing our STEM offerings at the university from a current 20% to 40%. So that's pretty significant for an art and design school. And we're experiencing right now high demand from students for STEM curriculum. Our Associate Dean of Liberal Arts and Sciences recently shared with me that the demand for STEM versus humanities courses is basically 4-to-1. So that's very interesting as a trend. I feel like we need to convince our students to continue to study the humanities, but it is a very interesting trend. So the academic plan sets out a series of priorities. So the inclusion of data, literacy, visualization, and programming skills across the entire curriculum. At the same time, each undergraduate student will be asked to choose one Indigenous course from a series, and that's within their 4-year education. And in a recent survey of our graduates, they acknowledged the importance of technical skills. So 92% stated that they needed this knowledge and the ability to acquire this knowledge. In other words, not just, STEM and technology, but how to have a discovery capacity within that. So I wanted to now talk a little bit about the kind of research context of the institution, and we have really, I think, well-established strengths in inclusive design. I'll talk about that in a moment. Real growth in visual analytics and other fields. And a lot of our focus is to try and bring a kind of human-centric integration of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and substance-based intelligence, like smart textiles, and other forms of emerging technology. So this idea of the human in the loop, which if you kind of read about it from an engineering perspective, can be kind of quite reductive. It's like, where do you put that human factor? For us, really suggests the value of human judgment and creativity, particularly in expressions of diversity. And so we're very interested in the ways that generative design tools develop these possibilities, and how issues of, the kind of human perception and cognition and creativity will be even more pronounced for the design profession itself and the arts. So also questions like, what data do we choose to use? How does our knowledge of context and experience sit next to algorithmic advice, whether in relation to aesthetics, image, or an answer? And our research plan, which is currently going through, it's a university, so lots of committees and a Senate. You can imagine that academic plan and how long it took. In any case, we have sort of 6 highlighted themes, which are quite poetic: creative action for social change, relational approaches to place, space, and time, critical mediations, and cultural inquiries. So the humanities are still strong, at least amongst the faculty. You can see that. And then making knowledge through material, form, and practice, design thinking, inclusive design, foresight and innovation, and finally art, design, science, and technology. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our exemplary projects as I move forward, because I think that they give you kind of a good sense of this sort of intermix of disciplines and what we're trying to do at the school. So we have a lot of work happening in augmented reality and virtual reality. And one of the projects that is very exciting is a virtual reality dementia simulation developed through a collaboration with Baycrest, a research center for dementia and aging, to train all of those entering the caregiving environment, from physicians to caregivers. Lisa Sokolov, who is the person who kind of leads training, talks about, and I quote, "We hope to increase empathy in those who provide care for people with dementia. Simulations allow formal and informal caregivers to live the experience of a person with dementia and literally see the world through their eyes," unquote. And in the virtual reality drama, when you are immersed in it, you experience 2 points of view: those of an older man with dementia who wanders at one point in the story, and then that of his caregiver who panics when he's disappeared. The Greenhouse Project. So we have a very deep commitment to sustainability and urban agriculture, and it's a popular topic amongst our students. Ian Clark is one of our research scientists, and he's a brain cancer stem cell scientist, urban farmer, and biomimicry design researcher. And he developed the greenhouse with support from the Metcalf Foundation, and it optimizes passive solar designs to trap heat for longer periods than a traditional greenhouse. So, Toronto is very cold in the winter, and it actually allows urban agriculture in our city and other northern cities with no supplemental heating. It's quite incredible. You actually can go up. It was first developed. It's now being, rhizomatically created various examples around the city of Toronto, but the first one was on our roof. That's good. It, of course, collects data, and it was really a kind of place of respite to go to. And Ian said, every morning when our colleagues were complaining about the extreme cold, we were given rather scathing looks when we were excited to run up to the greenhouse and see how warm it was. So we do have a lot of strength in inclusive design, and it's a focus for the university. And this is a lab that essentially brings together the idea of social inclusion. It has a long history of working with people with disabilities. It does a lot of work in blockchain to look at collaborative ways of using that emerging technology, and AI algorithms to look at groups on the periphery who don't tend to get included within either disability support or within kind of mainstream society. And this is a little image of their lab. And the Visual Analytics Lab, I will come to in a moment. It's my last. This is the Social Body Lab, which is a lab led by Kate Hartman, and a series of prototypes that speculate on how a body-based technology might augment how we express our emotional state in a visceral way, and how the behavior of wearable garments can be controlled through the movement of our bodies. So finally, my last example is the Visual Analytics Lab. I have the pleasure of leading it. In this lab, we are very interested in providing tools that allow us to think critically about data itself and about algorithms, understand historical biases in data sets, and consider outlier data, and provide visualization and analytic tools to facilitate numeracy. So a number of projects here: smart city visualizations, including Betaville, public displays of data by Patricio de Villa, one of our very talented faculty, and then analytic work that we've done with our largest national newspaper to indicate emotional quality of different columns and sections. So I'll just whip through those, and I will give you my ending paragraph here. This is some work with healthcare support. To end, we can imagine an art and design school as a kind of collaboratorium, as Michael Century aptly names these, offering a cross-disciplinary home for the creative arts and for design professionals, for humanists, social scientists, computer scientists, biologists, physicists, engineers, mathematicians, chemists, and medical researchers. It can operate as a third space. It acts as a kind of border or boundary region between two domains, two spaces, and is often a region of overlap or hybridity, according to Mark Mueller, who's a very interesting ethnographic researcher. And dialogues across differences and within differences are powerful when these occur between, not within groups. So to end, the 21st century needs art and design more than any epoch in recent history. Anna Kakolin, who's a French sociologist of culture, argues for a very broad science, art, and design engagement that is kinesthetique, tactile, ou polysensorial, so kinesthetic, tactile, or multisensual, that can permettant d'éprouver le sentiment de la présence de l'autre, so gives you a sense of the other, whether human or post-human, and that does not reproduce the separation of nature and culture. I bring us back to the Indigenous futurist movement, because it is one, and movement in Canada, reminding us that it is important to look ahead while reconciling the past. And perhaps most importantly, we must ignite the imaginations of young people with diverse experiences and knowledge to unsettle art, design, and STEM, ensuring that all of these disciplines are inclusive and powerful. Thank you.